On this episode of the podcast, we have joining us Heidi Ellsworth. Heidi is a partner at the Roofers Coffee Shop. She is one of the founders of National Women in Roofing and also one of the founders of the Roofing Technology Think Tank. We had a really cool conversation about all kinds of stuff related to the roofing industry, especially related to finding balance in this industry, finding new opportunities for people to come into the industry, what may draw them in, what may keep them there, why it's such an interesting dynamic industry that keeps people's attention over the years and keeps people coming back and draws new people in. Chelsey and I had a great time chatting with Heidi, and I think you're going to enjoy this episode. So without further ado, here is Heidi Ellsworth.
Heidi and I got connected through National Women in Roofing, and I actually got to help out at the coffee shop with Heidi for a little while. And she also got her career started at Carlisle. So we have some common paths there. And Heidi has just been so influential in getting women into the roofing industry. So she's just sort of someone that I've always gravitated towards and gave me a lot of career advice at the beginning of my career. So super excited to get some insight from her today.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And Heidi, how'd you get into roofing?
Well, first of all, Chelsey, thank you. That makes me, we've had such a great relationship over the years and working together, and National Women Roofing really has brought all that to the forefront. I got into roofing actually in 1993. I was working nonprofit and we had our first child, and it's one of those things that people don't realize, but when you work nonprofit, you work a lot of evenings, a lot of nights, a lot of committee meetings. And so I was looking to do something different that went in with the free up my family life in the evenings. And Malarkey Roofing out of Portland, Oregon, there was a position for a marketing coordinator, and I applied for it. And that's where I started. My dad and my mom and dad had a general contracting business. So I knew the trades and I was familiar with contractors. And so started working for Malarkey. And as they say, once in roofing, you never leave roofing. And that really what happened to me. I fell in love with the industry. So
Heidi, I was telling Matt a little bit ago that you do a lot of work with your family now at Roofers Coffee Shop. So tell us a little more about being a working mom and having your family work with you and all of that fun stuff.
yeah, I am so blessed because in 2015, I actually left Eagleview when they sold to private equity, all good terms. But it was at the perfect time because our youngest was a senior in high school, and I wanted to spend that year with her to really be able to, that's that final year of high school and for your last child. And at that time, I was able to start with Roofers Coffee Shop, where I am at now. And we were able to call our own hours, do however we wanted to. So I was able to really enjoy that year with Megan while starting, kind of reviving, because Roofers Coffee Shop started in 2002. So it's been around for a long time. But I was really excited when I came back full time to work with Vicki in 2015. Because of that, Megan and James, so we have two, James, it's talked about going to Malarkey because of James. And then Megan, when she was born, I actually started my own consulting business, marketing business called HJE Marketing, because again, I wanted to have time with Megan being born. And so our family has always been very intertwined in my career. And my husband was a stay-at-home dad so that I could work at Carlisle and Eagleview. So when the opportunity came in college, when Megan was in college, we started podcasting, just like this podcast. And we were podcasting, and we really needed to look at how we can produce these things, right? Because when you the production value, I am older. I didn't know what to do. But yay, so he was a music major at University of Colorado, Denver. And so she started podcasting for us and, basically all the production. And that was in 2018. So she's been with us since 2018, worked for us all the way through college, and then came to work for us afterwards. And then in 2020, our oldest, who was in politics, between COVID and politics, decided he wanted to try something different. So he came to work.
Understandable.
And now he's our chief of staff, and Megan is our multimedia manager. They're both on leadership of the company. And my husband does logistics, works trade shows. So we are very blessed. I can't tell you every single day how thankful I am to have that. And we love working together.
That's fantastic. I know it can sometimes be a challenge as well to have family together in a business. So if you can make it work and get the benefits of having time together and flexibility, and not, end up at each other's throats for reasons maybe it's not too often.
It's not always perfect, but it's good.
That's great. You mentioned, this idea of like once in roofing, you kind of never leave. Why do you think that is? Like, what do you think it is about the industry that draws people in and keeps them?
You know, there is just something about the roofing industry of how we support each other. And I think a lot of it has to do with the associations. The associations build camaraderie, build people, and then, the manufacturers and distributors are going to the trade shows, meeting with the contractors, and they just kind of bring you in, especially if you have a chance to be involved and to work through things. And even if you don't, even for folks who maybe don't leave their home base or their home company that often and get out, they still are now online. Roofers Coffee Shop, National Women in Roofing, they are feeling a part of this community. And over the years, I think one of the things that I've noticed the most from when I first started at Malarkey was everybody watches out for everybody else. So, early 30 years ago, being a woman in roofing, we'd be going to the shows. I'd be, on my own. There weren't that many women involved, and had all of these amazing gentlemen who would watch out for me and who were my friends and who we worked together. And I think there's something about that then obviously you give back the same. And right before this next generation comes in or new people, and you start giving them, and you don't see that in every industry. And I've been involved in other industries, and they don't give that same sense of family that we really do have, I believe, in roofing. And it keeps people here because maybe not in the same jobs, but in the industry. And then when you add something, I think I'm prejudiced, but when you add something like National Women in Roofing, where you have this safe space for women, the growth of women in the industry has been amazing. I mean, do you see from when I started 30 years ago to today, it is so different. And that to me is a huge acknowledgement to the industry and to them embracing, bringing diversity into the industry.
Absolutely. And you said you were, if I understand right, you were one of the founding members of National Women in Roofing. When was that? And what's the part of the origin story of that?
Yeah. So 2014 was really when we started. I had the idea for a couple of years. Because I attend so many trade shows and meet so many wonderful people like Chelsey, and we would always end up getting together after the shows with a bunch of women, right? And they're always like, "How are you doing this, attracting everybody?" I'm like, "I just asked. You want to go have a glass of wine, and there we go."
Let's just get together.
I would just get together and we just talk. And I thought, we need to have something a little bit more structured. We need to have a safe place where women can grow their career, where they can network. And I was really big on networking because sometimes, and you all know this, sometimes, especially back in the day, women were left out. They weren't invited to a lot of the networking functions. And so I really wanted to see that. And so in 2014, we actually talked to the MRCA, Midwest contractors, and they kind of helped us get started. And then we took it national, and working with people like Jennifer Ford Smith from John Spanville, Sherry Carlozzi, who's now with FiberTech, and Jennifer Stone, who is now with Tremco. The four of us were really, I pitched it, but they all came in, and together we really made it happen and put that together. So 2014 was really one of our first meetings.
Uh-huh. That's fantastic. What are some of the main changes besides just sort of more generally involvement? But what are some of the changes you've seen in the roofing industry that you attribute to some of that greater engagement of women in the industry?
New generations are coming up, and I can say this as a Gen Xer. I learn every single day from Gen Zs and millennials, and I've been mentored by them. I've become a better person because of them. And I truly believe that is what has happened in the roofing industry. I think a lot of baby boomers and Gen Xers, we were kind of grown with be tough and just go figure it out, right? Or maybe even a little bullied out on the rooftop or on the construction site. And since I worked with my dad in general contracting, I knew this. I had seen it. And I think that has changed things. And, just to be very pragmatic, the labor shortage has helped a lot, right? You can't discount 50% of the population and still get people working. And so I think those two things, the older generations were ready for a change. They didn't like how they grew up in the industries, and the younger generation just have pushed that. And then the labor shortage just has kind of taken it to the next level.
Heidi, I think one of the changes that you helped attribute to is just this welcoming and this gratitude for working moms and working dads and working caregivers. One of the first things that Heidi said about the Roofers Coffee Shop is, we love working moms here, and there's kids around, and you're bringing your family into the industry. And it's no longer, oh, well, if you're traveling, who's at home with your kids? It's just sort of a part of it. And I think National Women in Roofing has just made such great strides for working moms to feel more empowered in the industry and sort of get away from the stigma of the mom guilt of being a working mom in the industry.
I agree 100%, Chelsey. That is, I think about my career, and my husband was a stay-at-home dad and was thrilled. He worked landscaping and wood cutting and everything on the side, but he was there for the kids because I was in a job where there wasn't a whole lot of tolerance for, I have to go pick up my kids, right? It was definitely more, you need to travel, you need to be here late hours, you need to do these things. And at the leadership level that I was at, I was one of the few women. And so men had that support system at home. We had to figure out in our family how that support system was working. I just married an absolutely amazing guy. But that is not as much today. I see the changes. I see the differences where, like, we were at a show this last week, and moms and dads were like, you know what, we're out of here early because we're going home for Halloween. And I thought, yeah, it's changing. I think we are embracing and giving so much more credence to the importance of family, and bringing it more in with us instead of it just being two separate things.
Right.
Well, and I think setting that precedent too, something we like to say to our kids is we can do hard things. And it's not easy to be a working parent, right? It's a lot of balancing and blending. But Heidi, I'd love for you to speak a little more on women doing hard things in the industry, because you've set such a precedent that that's a huge possibility for all of us. So I'd love to hear more on that.
What a great question. I think sometimes the hard things is just being confident enough to be heard. It's not always easy. You think, I'm not, maybe I'm not as, I can think through my career, like, well, I just don't understand data and statistics as well. So I'll just listen. And I had to learn to do the hard things to understand data and statistics, right? I had to do that because I knew that wasn't about being a man or a woman. That was about, that's the job. And so you need to be able to do that job. And I think that women have not always been encouraged to think that way, right? They have their jobs, their roles, men have their jobs, their roles. Well, we're kind of flipping that upside down as a culture. And so when you do that, that also means doing the hard things of learning things that maybe traditionally you weren't taught or you never really thought about. And then speaking up and being okay that if you're not right, that it's okay. You still are part of that conversation and you're there. And then standing up for everybody else in the room. I think that's a really hard thing to do. But I listened to this great speaker one time, and she was talking about, she's in a union. She worked as a plumber in the unions, and there was some harassment against some Hispanic workers, and she stood up for them, knowing she was already at somewhat of a disadvantage as a woman, but she stood up for them and said, "This is not right. We can't talk this way." I think that's really hard to do. And I think that's the other thing that has changed. It's gotten a little bit easier, but people also know that other people have their backs if they do stand up that and defend people who need to be defended at that moment. So hope that answers your question. But those are the hard things for me.
I think that's hard for most people.
Yeah.
The confidence to speak about anything that you're not 100% certain on, right? Like if you don't really believe in your heart that you're the smartest person in the room on a certain topic, it's very hard to then speak up about it. And especially hard if you're asking questions about it. You're just betraying right away that you don't know what the heck you're talking about and you're trying to learn more about it.
Right.
I think I'd be really challenging. And so developing that kind of culture in whatever organization you're in, whether it's a business or a nonprofit or a professional organization or something, I think is such a huge motivator for the people that are in it, your team, your staff, your employees, coworkers, whatever. That if you can create that kind of an environment where people are expecting to be learning together and learning in the open, it's really powerful. And so, anything that organizations like yours can do to help that keep going is really important.
And that the diversity of thought, there are so many studies out there right now on boards, for in meetings, for leadership teams, a diversity of thought. So that means, whether it's genders, whether it's cultures, wherever you come from, maybe education. That means you're gonna have to be open to questions, and you have to have people who are willing to ask questions and then share their thoughts around that. And but the studies are showing in really big numbers, productivity, profitability, all of those things. When you bring in that diversity of thought, it makes a huge difference.
I mean, I think we've seen it where getting ideas from various people on the team. And especially even encouraging ideas from either people new to the industry, new to the company, in some way from the outside of what most of the people in the room have for experience, can be really valuable because they see things that we don't see. We take a bunch of stuff for granted, and that they are able to come in and say like, "Why are you doing it that way? That seems kind of weird." And then maybe you can explain it. You can say, "Well, we do it this way because of this, this, and this," and then they say, "Oh, I understand now. That makes complete sense." Or you say, "I don't know. Actually, we've always done it that way," and that's like the first clue that you may not be on the right track. But having it be, an arena of ideas, like we're gonna have anyone can throw in an idea, and we're gonna talk about it and evaluate it, and the best ideas are gonna end up at the top. That's great. As opposed to it being based on some other outside factor like seniority or your background, your gender, or something like that, right? Like having the discussion on the ideas, I think is really powerful. And so, but you need a culture where it's where that is the focus, right? And that anyone is entitled to throw in an idea, regardless of your background. And whether you have 0 years experience or 20, like your idea could be just as good.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Matt always says there's no bad ideas. And I love that. You have to talk through things. You have to think it out loud. You have to get a different perspective. And every idea, even if you don't put it into action in that moment, it still plants some kind of a seed.
Exactly. And I don't know, when we really look at this next generation too, if we can just step back and give them space because they're really the consumers of the future. And so as we are making decisions as a business, we really need to be looking at this younger generation to what are they interested in? How are they going to be different? How is their buying going to be different from ours, right? How do they go to market and how do they purchase? So I think that diversity is really important too.
So that's a good shift to maybe talk about marketing a little bit and how, you obviously have a storied history in marketing at different companies, Roofers Coffee Shop. Maybe a question I had to start with is, what do you see, if anything, unique to roofing in terms of marketing? Like how is marketing in this industry alike or different from other industries that you have experience with?
Yeah. And I'm going to say roofing, but I think this kind of really actually goes a little bit to overall construction. But roofing definitely has this. There is a natural born cynicism of contractors, and contractors have been, have not had good experiences with warranties, with new products, with new technologies. So they just have this natural inclination to say no right up front. And because they've been burned in the past, good, bad, or indifferent, but it's pretty much the truth. At some point, they've been burned by something. And so in roofing, we're talking to advertising partners here at Roofers Coffee Shop, or when I was in charge of marketing for Eagle View or Carlisle, it's really about the relationship. You have to build a relationship, because if you don't build a strong relationship, then you don't have trust. And if you don't have trust, they're not going to, you're just not going to be able to sell the product. And so, or you're going to sell it 5 or 10 years from now when it's been proven that it works, right? So I had a lot of contractors say to me, come back in 10 years and talk to me about that aerial measurement thing, Heidi, because we're not doing it. And so I think that is true, but in a B2B and in construction, there's just been so many, it's so critical if somebody doesn't stand behind their warranty, if their product doesn't work, you have a whole building that could have problems and weather coming in. So those relationships and transparency. And I also think being authentic is really key within the roofing industry. I don't think they want to be schmoozed. Now, it doesn't mean they don't want to go on a trip or something. They want to know really, what's this going to do for my business, and how it's going to serve my customers. So those are the things that sometimes, when you're looking at B2C and you're looking at, clothing or something that's not as critical, people buy a lot. They don't need that relationship. They don't need that trust. Even look at Amazon. I don't need a relationship with Amazon, right? I just need to know that they're going to deliver. That's not the same in roofing.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because that matches my experience too, where the kind of business development side of selling is a really big part of the process, and marketing is, I think, developing, but historically maybe has not been such a big part of the sales process in AEC overall. Like you said, not just roofing, but construction, the whole architecture, engineering, construction industry. And I think you're right, because of that value placed on track record and risk aversion generally across the industry. Those relationships and that trust really carries a lot of weight. But it seems like there's, at least in my opinion, there's need for better marketing for growth, for a world where the markets themselves are bigger and more geographically diverse, and some of the technology is breaking down barriers to, like, if I was limited to working with people in Massachusetts only anyway, then I don't need to be worried about making connections with somebody in Ohio. But when some of those geographic barriers start to get broken down, then that same business development model of, like, well, let's meet for coffee, or we're going to catch up at an event, a local industry organization event or something, that doesn't work anymore, and or as well, and it's not as scalable for sure. And Roofers Coffee Shop, it seems, is all about taking advantage of some of these contemporary ways of communicating with people and reaching people. So, like, how do you think about that evolution and that those two branches of the sort of sales tree, the more brand building marketing and the relationship building, or at least the person to person relationship building of business development?
Yeah, it's such a great point, Matt. I mean, and it's really leads to, as a culture, we are doing more research. We have opportunities to do more research. We can look into things and really talk to other people about it more. One of the reasons we named Roofers Coffee Shop the coffee shop is because my dad, as a general contractor, would go to his local coffee shop with all the trucks out in front of it, and that's where he would get his news. He'd get, find out if there's somebody looking for jobs, right?
Right.
But that was his means of research, of kind of seeing what everybody thought. Whereas today, and when I started, it was all about that 4-color, beautiful full-page ad in the magazines. Today, that's just doesn't do it. The consumers, the contractors, consultants, everybody out there needs to see articles and content that is authentic and real. They need to see videos. They want to listen to podcasts. They want to listen to webinars. They want to engage. They don't want to just be spoken to. They want to be able to chat back and forth and engage in that conversation. And that's because they're looking for a lot of different, and this still is all marketing, but people don't always think of it as marketing. But this is true marketing today. Is across the board. You have to look at every way that you're touching that customer and that you are then supporting your sales team to build that relationship with that customer. Because if you aren't giving the right tools, the right content, the right information, it's going to get lost in the noise. And so to your point, I agree. And that's really what we've built Roofers Coffee Shop on. And that's what we believe is that we're generational. Some people want to read, some people want to listen, some people want to watch. We need to provide it in all the ways they can in the most authentic, honest voice that we can so that consumers, whether that's contractors or consultants or the final end users can get this information and build that trust. And when at that point, the business development person or the salesperson comes in, we've already started building that trust level.
Right. Yeah, that's something I've noticed and found interesting in the industry, especially when looking at other professional services firms. That generally it seems like many don't recognize that opportunity or necessity, for building that brand in that way. Like you look at a lot of big firm websites. Sure. They have essentially orders of magnitude more marketing budget than I do, but their websites are pretty, but they have a lot of information, right? There's not actually that much content in terms of whether it be like articles or videos or something like that, like actual authentic content, right?
Where we actually who are the people behind this firm?
That's sort of thing. That's right. What was their voice? What is Chelsey's voice versus Nat's voice versus like how are these individuals, human beings that I'm working with, what are they like?
Sure.
And it's an interesting opportunity for smaller players, I think, to really shine through and to develop that voice where they can be out there developing that brand and that message. So that's one thing I've noticed I think is kind of interesting. And like you said, I think a lot of firms and businesses still recognize the value in that. They don't see that as part of the proposition. And especially, I think, when you extend it to social media, right? That's either like another level.
So important. It is so important. So many people are getting all their information from social media. Now, I don't totally agree with that, but LinkedIn is in our world, when you're thinking about consultants in the construction industry and roofing, LinkedIn, people are depending on those articles. They're depending on reading those things and the engagement that they're hearing from other people. And I think to your point, Matt, one of the things you're doing so great is this right here, this podcast, right? You're putting yourself out there as a thought leader, which you are, but you're doing it by developing this content, talking about these topics that aren't all, we could have started this podcast and just talked about, building enclosure consulting the whole time. Like, you're talking about the greater industry and how that all plays into it. And I think those are the people, like you said, the smaller companies who really get that are going to have a bigger presence than a lot of the big companies can't get out of their way.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. And I mean, for me, it's just interesting. Like I find conversations like this, like I'm learning things, right? It's stimulating for me in some way that, it's fun. It's a way I like to spend my time. So it's a win-win, I guess. But it is interesting that seems lost on a lot of people and groups in the business. I did notice on I think in your bio you mentioned seeking win-win solutions or win-win outcomes in personal dynamics, interpersonal dynamics. And I wanted to just ask a little bit, your thoughts on that. It happens to be one of our internal core values of our company is to seek these win-win outcomes. So maybe just say a few words about that.
Yeah. And I kind of look at that a lot of times as 3 wins, because I think there's multiple, a lot of times you can with one company, you can build that win-win, right? You advertise with me, I promote you, that's a win-win. But to me, there's another level of, are we doing the right things to help that next consumer or that next customer? Or are we doing, or maybe it's the industry, or maybe it's other associations. There's this bigger picture of the win. And a lot of times people, they'll say, well, everybody should win except for our competition. I'm kind of like, I want peace for all of us. And so let's, not that I'm working with my competition, but I want the industry overall to rise. And so if whoever not that we have a lot of competitors, but whoever we're competing with, I want them to be rising and helping to grow the industry too, and to take it to that next professional level. And so I think if people think that way, like one of our core values, I don't know if we're calling it, there's another fancy name we're calling it, but it's like a core value, is that we want to shine a light on the industries we serve. And so by shining that light, we're writing articles, we're doing podcasts, we're getting them on video, we're talking about them. And the industry we serve is roofing. And so how do we bring the whole industry up? And I think that's the true win. When you do that,
I love that.
with everyone.
For sure.
I think that's 100% right on. And it matches a lot how I think about it too, where I think there's this virtuous cycle that develops when, the parties that are involved directly are both benefiting. And that creates value that overall contributes outside of that direct relationship, right? So like in the context of, say, a company and its employees, if the company can create an environment for the employees to be successful and really works to be in existence for their benefit, then they in turn contribute to the success of the company, which means the company is contributing value to the community, and the community benefits from that value. And everybody keeps winning bigger and bigger, and it's this great positive sum game. Like you said, there's not, it doesn't have to be at the expense of your competitor. The competitor can also do well. I spend, I'll go get lunch and eat with other folks, that either own or in leadership positions at other firms, and I have neither of us have a problem talking to each other about what's going on and what employees are needing or doing or recruiting or all these things. Like, we're nominally competing, yes, but like the rising tide lifting all boats is definitely true, and it's a lot more helpful to everybody. I think even just it's a lot more fun to do that. It's a lot less stressful, but it just so happens to work out better too. So that's been my experience for sure.
I think that's something we as an industry really excel at. It's something so unique about our industry is that we can have those relationships with competition, and we can learn from each other, or just we've done such a good job at breaking down the geographical barriers as well. I mean, just last night I had dinner with women from National Women in Roofing, and I'm here in Hudson, but I live in Ohio, and just the opportunity to support each other through these different associations and learn alongside folks that you're technically competing against. It's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's so true, Chelsey. When we first started National Women in Roofing, there were a number of people who said, well, we're competitors, so, we don't want to be, we're not going to come in the room. And I said, well, that's good, because if you were coming in the room, I would ask you to leave that outside.
I mean, that's huge.
Leave it outside, because inside we're not talking about competitors. We're talking about rising and lifting all women and empowering them. And so that was a hard concept at first. I don't know if you remember that, Chelsey, but we had a few times as a little hard time. And now today it's not even a topic.
No, I mean, oh my goodness, we meet with people from anywhere and everywhere, any company. We're just happy to support each other. And, there's career progression, there's customers being introduced. There's just so much good that comes out when you're able to leave that at the door.
I think that attitude plays really well into the marketing arena as well, and where the more you can just try to give value to whoever your audience is that you're talking to, the more successful you'll be. And I think a lot of people are sometimes afraid of giving away their secrets or something like that. But really, like it's just building connection and building brand identity and building that trust and relationship that we're all after anyway. And I've never had any
negative effect from trying harder to give more value out.
Right. Like it's never
Then a detriment to more into the post to give more specific ideas of what I'm trying to say. More even like we have articles on our website that are fairly technical and advice, like something I would put in a report or like some advice I would give to a paying client, but it doesn't hurt to share kind of information. And in fact, it's very beneficial, I think. And so it's that same attitude of like the rising tide and the positive sum game, and it all contributes to everyone's success at the end.
Well, and you carry that with you. Heidi, you mentioned earlier, once you're in roofing, you tend to stay in roofing. If you come into it with that attitude, you really do run into that same people over a number of years. And if they know that that's your genuine attitude, that you're there to support each other and support the industry, it just continues on through the next generation coming into the industry.
So true. And we are a very generational industry. So I'm like we said earlier, I'm really happy that my kids want to be part of this industry. I mean, I never thought that would happen, but I think because of a lot of things we've talking about tonight, it's becoming very attractive to that next generation.
Yeah, and I know I want to be mindful of time and not take up too much of your day, but I did have one more question that just got sparked by that line of thought. I think it is pretty commonly recognized that there are a few shortages in some areas of, especially like the skilled labor part of the industry, the actual roofing trades, the guys and girls up on the roof doing the work. What's been your experience with that, and how do you see that? What can we do as an industry to demonstrate the opportunities that are here for that next generation of skilled labor to be able to keep doing these projects?
Well, that is a great question because it's so timely. So as an industry, and this is being led by NRCA, right now we are very involved with career development, workforce place development. And so in the last couple of years, we have been at Skills USA, which is a huge competition for the trades. And we have now been able to get, believe it or not, it's over 60 years old, and roofing was never a part of it until about 3 years ago. And so the kids are coming in, young people, both in vocational schools and secondary schools. So it's not just even kids, it's anybody who went going back to vocational or community college. And they are competing in all kinds of trades: plumbing, electric, cosmetology, culinary, you name it. And now within the last 3 years, roofing is there. Right now it's flat. And so we're doing TPO and heat welding, and that's the competition. There is actually what they call Teamworks, which is where they build a tiny, and I mean tiny, you can't even live in it. It's like a really little structure that has shingles on it. So they're also doing roofing there, which they didn't used to. They used to just build these structures with numbers. And Skills USA, we are really taking off. The NRCA is also involved with other programs, working with vocational teachers, talking to them about roofing, offering their training free. The track program is free for vocational schools. And next week, this Saturday, we have 3 teams from the U.S., all 28 and younger. So all young. This year it is all men, young men from 3 different companies who are going to Innsbruck, Austria for the national competition. It's called the IFD, International Federation of Dock and Lawn, which means roof, for a national competition, kind of the Olympics.
Wow. That's awesome. Very cool.
It's so cool. And we are so honored. Roofers Coffee Shop has been asked to go with them. So
That's amazing.
I know. We're going to be documenting the whole trip from Chicago to Innsbruck and back, the whole competition, interviewing each of the young 28 and younger competitors and their mentors. And so to your question, that's what's changing, is when between the magic of digital and online, right? Because before, to be honest, in roofing, it was all in trade publications in print, and nobody saw it except for those of us who are here. Now we have all of this, it's digital, that's going out to everybody out there. We are showing parents that it's a great career. We're showing kids that it's a great career. We're showing fun competitions, going to Europe. I mean, hello. And, all of these things. So that change is taking off, and it's being led by the National Roofing Contractors Association, NRCA. But Western States is doing grants for Skills USA. A lot of associations, National Women in Roofing is involved in Skills USA. So we're all picking up this lift, and it's going to have huge results because this is who we need. They need to know that roofing is just as cool as being an electrician or a plumber.
It's a great career.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's really great to hear. I was not aware about that. And
Oh, I'm so excited.
we'll put some links to that in the show notes. So if anyone's curious, they can find out more. That's a really neat program.
Yeah,
We can get you the links for NRCA and Skills USA, but also on the YouTube channel for Roofers Coffee Shop, we're going to be live streaming from competition. So
cool.
Is there anything else you want to chat about, Chelsey, before we wrap up?
I just want to say thank you, Heidi. It was so fun to get to catch up with you. And this is always one of the best parts of the industry is getting to see friends from different parts of the industry and connect. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to meet you, Heidi. Thank you for taking some time to chat with us.
I have to tell you, thank you so much. I was honored. What a great conversation. And I want to thank all of you for being a part of the coffee shops too. So thank you for being a part. And it's these kind of communities that just mean the world to us. So thank you so much.
And we're thrilled to be part of it. And thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks, Heidi.
All right.
Bye.